Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Ms. Liman-Baranovsky, and I just want to walk you through the only part of Lesson 8 we're going to do, which I wrote on your review sheet is not technically on the test, but there's two caveats there. The first is that this worksheet is going to involve some good coordinate plane review, so that's one of the reasons we're going to do it. Some of us are going to do it before the test. Some of us are going to do it after the test. And it is possible that we will end up having like a homework or a quiz on this test. On this material. So we are going to learn this. You do have to know it. That being said, it is not going to be explicitly on the test as regular questions. It could also be bonus. Okay, so let's take a look at these problems. Okay, how many parts does the coordinate plane have? Well, let's just take a quick look at that. The simple answer is actually 4. There's a slightly more sophisticated answer, but the simple answer is that there are 4 quadrants. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there are 4 quadrants. However, the one thing that you do want to be aware of is that not every place is exactly in a quadrant. We could also take a look at the axes. This is the y-axis. It runs between quadrants, right? Well, let's take a look at another axis. This is the x-axis. It runs between quadrants. And most importantly, that's the origin, right? So there's really technically 7 unique places on the coordinate plane where we can put things. But today we're going to be focusing on the quadrants. We'll see the x-axis, the y-axis, and the origin a teeny bit, but our main focus is the 4 quadrants. Okay, so a quadrant is one of the 4 sections of the coordinate plane. And these sections are formed by the crossing of the x-axis and the y-axis. So if we're thinking about, is it above the axis, is it below the axis, is it on the left side, is it on the right side, right? That's what we're talking about when we're talking about what are the quadrants, right? So the reason we care about the quadrants is that we want to be able to say, when we look at a point, where exactly is it going? What part of the coordinate plane is it on, okay? So we actually can tell by looking at the signs, right? Whether they're positive or negative. Let's just make sure that's actually pen. Yeah. Let's look at the signs of the point's coordinate. So for example, let's do our warm-up. This could be on your test. Let's graph negative 3, 4. So we start at the origin. That negative 3 tells us to go left 3, 1, 2, 3. Now we're aligned with 3. Now that 4 tells us to go up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have graphed this point. Okay, and we can label it negative 3, 4. Now what quadrant is it located in? Well, it says right there, it's in quadrant 2. This is a Roman numeral. You can also write the numbers. With normal numbers, but I will always write them with Roman numerals, okay? And one more thing I want to show you before we go in is that how do you know which quadrant is which? Well, let's just take a quick look at this guy, okay? We'll do this in yellow. So if we make the letter C here, right? That tells us the order to go into. The beginning quadrant, we know where to start because that's where all the numbers are positive. That's our first place. And then we go in order. It's called counterclockwise, but I like the letter C. That's 2. That's 3. That's 4. We may have to erase some of this later when we're graphing. Okay? Let me show you that again on the one above that I've already drawn all over. Let's pick a new color. Let's take this brown, okay? So we start at quadrant 1. This is where all the things are positive, and we make a C. The next one we hit is quadrant 2. Then we go to quadrant 3. Then we go to quadrant 4, okay? So remember the C. That's the copyright symbol. Remember the C, because the C is going to tell you how to number the quadrants, okay? If you don't know what quadrant numbers things are, then take a moment and look in your book on page, I think it's 183, this page. It has them labeled for you. Okay. If you ever don't know, you can look in your book for reference or look here in your note-taking guide for reference, right? That's what note-taking guides are for. Okay, so now we're going to practice page 185, numbers 1 to 6 and 11 to 14. There are 2 expectations in this lesson. We're not going to do one of them because it's not so important. The quadrants idea is pretty fundamental. Okay, so what we're going to try to do is understand the signs, what the signs tell us to do. So we're going to identify the quadrant where the point is located. If you think you can already do this without help, I strongly urge you, pause the video, try to do it without help, and then come back to check your answers. Okay, let's look at point 2, -5, okay? So we start at the origin, right? We go 2 points to the right because the first coordinate is positive, and then we go 5 points down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because the second number is negative, okay? That's number 1. And I'll put a little orange dot next to it. So to graph the point, first we move to the right from the origin, right? And then we move down, okay? So that quadrant that is to the right of the origin and down is quadrant 4, okay? And once we get really good with our signs, we won't need to graph them. Now, it happens to be that if you scroll a bit down, you will see that it says graph the points from 2, 3, and 6 on the axis below when you finish writing what quadrant they're in. You could also do that first. So I'm going to do that as I do 2, 3, and 6 for you. So let's pick another color. Let's pick green, okay? And this one is 4, 1. Both coordinates are positive. 4, 1, okay? And now we know that the quadrant where both coordinates are positive is the first, right? We sort of defined it that way. Obviously, we're going to start with the one where they're both positive. And I'm actually labeling that 2 because it is problem number 2. Technically, it should be labeled with a letter, but we can live with that. Okay, so that we said a second ago is quadrant 1. Okay, now let's do -6, -2. This is actually the exact opposite because this point has 2 negative coordinates. So let's take a look at what that's going to look like for us. -6, -2. Okay, we actually can graph that. The -6 means we go to the left of the origin till -6, and the -2 means we go down. And what we will discover here is that any point, and that 3 is for problem number 3, any point that has 2 negative coordinates is in quadrant 3. And by the way, it says that here on this grid that I gave you, plus, minus, minus, and plus, minus, and I'm going to go over that with you again. But that's actually there for you for reference, so you can always refer to that. So we just said that any point with both negative coordinates, the quadrant number is going to be 3, okay? So we've done both positive, both negative, and we've done a couple examples with 2 and 4. 2 and 4 are going to be the trickier ones. So this one is -7, 3, which means we go first left for the -7 and then up. So left and up, right? Or another way of thinking about it is it's a negative number, then a positive number. Left and then up takes us to quadrant 2, okay? So we're going to give that an answer of quadrant 2. 8, 8, both positive, so you know that it's quadrant. Very good, quadrant 1. And just like in number 1, we have a positive number, then a negative number. So even though the numbers are different, we're still going to the right and down. And to the right and down, that is quadrant 4, okay? And we actually have to graph that one for number 6. 1, -1, so we're going to do that. 1, -1. 1 is forward 1, -1 is down 1, and that's our point for number 6. So we have graphed those 3 points, which is actually what we were told to do after, but we did it first. Okay, so we just have 4 more examples. And if you didn't pause the video before and try to do these on your own, you should. The numbers are going to get bigger, but the signs are the same. Try it yourself. Okay. So this point, -8, -9, has 2 negative numbers. We know that 2 negative numbers takes us to quadrant 3. 12, 1, 2 positive numbers. We know that 2 positive numbers is quadrant 1. Now this one we have to think about because it's 1 negative and 1 positive. So we remember that the first negative number sends us, if you can see the green dot sort of going, it sends us left, right? And then up, so that's quadrant 2. Okay? And then this one is a positive, then a negative. We start at the origin. That first 5 sends us right, that -20 sends us down, and that lands us in quadrant 4. Okay? And this is something that we're going to work with, but we've been also practicing our graphing and being comfortable with the graph. So let's do our 3 exceptions. These are our 3 exceptions. I mentioned them briefly at the beginning. Let's graph the point -1, 0. We start at the origin and we go back 1, but we don't go up or down, right? We'll call that pink, right? How would we describe its location on the graph? Well, it happens to be that it is between the 2 and the 3, quadrant 2 and quadrant 3, but we would call it on the x-axis, right? That's the name of that horizontal line, the x-axis. We might say it's on the x-axis between quadrant 2 and 3, but that's where we would describe it. Okay, now let's switch to a nice light blue for question number 9. Let's graph the point 0, -4. So that first 0 tells us don't go left, don't go right, stay where you are. And then we go down 4, right? So this spot is actually on the y-axis. Okay? And again, it's between quadrants 3 and 4, but it is on the y-axis. Okay, so now the last point we're going to graph is 0, 0, and you guys know that that is called the origin. Oh, that's too much. And we are going to graph that right here. It says don't go anywhere, and we would describe that as the origin. It doesn't have another name. We know exactly where that is, right? It's right between all 4 quadrants. Okay, so the exit card, we are going to do 2 things for the exit card, and you should definitely try to do these independently without listening to me if you can. Okay, what I would actually do is go through with my highlighter and highlight the ones that have similar signs. This one is 2 positives. This one's 2 negatives. Okay, I know that the one with 2 positives is going in quadrant 1. I know that the one with 2 negatives is going in quadrant 3, right? Because I know that because that's what the rule said above. Now we just need to classify these guys. So this is pos neg, and this is pos neg. And this is neg pos, and this is neg pos. So these are going to go together. So remember that quadrant 2, right, is up here. And so it means we go left of the axis, but it's positive, so that's going to be negative positive. So we're going to copy the ones that are negative positive into this box, because that's where that goes. Okay, now let's switch colors. Now we've got only left the ones that are positive, negative, right? So that means we go forward, right, from the origin, but then we go down, right? So that's what positive, negative looks like. And so we're going to write those ones under here, under quadrant 4. And that's going to be our exit card, okay? And then we should think about this one also. And one of the things that we can do to help us out is to draw this again, and we can write plus, plus, right? We can write minus, minus, right? This is what I drew before, and it's also on the graph, on the picture above. So that's minus plus, like I drew before, and that's plus minus, like I drew before. Okay, so using that minus, it shouldn't be a plus, it should be a minus. Using this information, we should be able to very nicely generate. If I tell you a point is in quadrant 1, you know its x-coordinate is, well, I only see pluses there, so clearly I can just write positive. Okay. If I tell you a point is in quadrant 2, that's over here, you know its y-coordinate is, well, what's its y-coordinate? The second one, positive. If I tell you a point is in quadrant 3, you know its x-coordinate is, well, you know it's negative because both coordinates in quadrant 3 are negative. And if I tell you a point is in quadrant 4, you know its y-coordinate is also negative. Okay, so you have some problems to do. The homework is not due immediately, but it will be due eventually. So look into that and have a wonderful weekend or whenever you're watching.